So today's conversation is going to be relatively short, simple, and quick. I want to focus on three kind of core strategies that are very proven to boost participation and member engagement with your award programs. It's actually a follow-up to a webinar we hosted about 2 months ago, where a lot of individuals were asking, these are great resources and great insights, but we really struggle with participation or getting kind of buy-in from our broader membership to participate and get excited around the programs. And if that resonates or if that's similar to you, toss an emoji or a thumbs up in the chat. But because of that, we want to kind of carve out, I think, three of the most impactful things that you can deploy to your programs with or without reviewer that will certainly kind of address those items. We will be following up with like a blog post version of this conversation with the recording. And we're also going to offer probably 4 or 5 other elements I think would just kind of broaden the overall member engagement, not related to awards, that we're going to make sure we include. With that said, I think there's kind of like 2 core metrics I do want to kind of address here. By implementing these 3 things, and it really is all 3 of them, most of the associations that we work with see about an 80 to 85% increase in overall participation in the program. That's a spread amongst nominators, nominees, as well as just general membership participating in other kind of follow-up campaigns and resources. And then for those of you that are using like AMS integrations or tracking member engagement scores, that number is about 30 to 40% increase in just engagement scores alone. And what's really exciting about that is it's not just those who are selected for an award or a recipient. It's those that just participate in general. They're more likely to attend conferences. Their annual non-member dues typically will go up by participating in other types of campaigns and things that you're doing. So while there are 3 relatively simple things to implement, the impact that they have is pretty dynamic on your programs. So for those of you who don't know, really kind of quick introduction to reviewer. My goal here today is that I will visualize all 3 of these elements in our system. It is not, however, intended to be a deep dive or a demo of the platform. So for those of you who are interested in, looking at reviewer or a platform to kind of power not just your award programs, but also scholarships, grants, fellowships, board nominations, committee selections, speaker or proposal collection. I'd love to have that conversation at some point. But kind of our introduction, what makes us very unique is we actually live the life that many of you live. So we serve on part of the volunteer review committees for a lot of these types of programs. That was way back in time when this was all done through paper. So if you can kind of visualize that with me, there really was a time when we had these award programs and these scholarships where people would physically mail in or fax in or send in PDFs of their entries. And as an operator, as an admin in the education or in the membership departments, you're downloading, you're exporting, you're actually building out physical binders and mailing it to us. So we've come a long way since then. Where many of you may live, and give me a thumbs up as well in the chat, this is where you currently live, is you're using a wide variety of tools. So your AMSs, a lot of spreadsheets, downloading of documents, emails, Google Drive, as a way to kind of collect applications, recompile them, and then ship them off to the team for review and selection. And some of the challenges that we faced by that was obviously it still was a tremendous amount of operational overhead and work, but we started to see lack of efficiency and engagement for really the 2 other parties involved that make up a much bigger percentage of participants, and that's your membership and your volunteers and your reviewers. So we started to see, reviewer or volunteer fatigue. We saw misplaced and lost applications, and over time, a diminishing number of people actually submitting and participating. So then we kind of look back and we talk to our boards and our teams and we say, well, it's time for annual awards. Let's just do it the same way we always have. And there really isn't a lot of buy-in or kind of excitement around it. So, we built Reviewer as an online platform to run all these types of programs end-to-end the full life cycle, obviously to help you increase efficiency, but equally, if not more important, is how to make these a staple program as part of your broader kind of member recognition and engagement initiatives. And like I mentioned before, we will be sending out some additional resources that go way deeper into how you can incorporate these into what I call a member engagement flywheel, which is injecting elements of these programs such as celebration, highlighting a finalist, doing podcasts, or doing kind of like guest writing blog posts by participants that make up your broader member engagement initiative. So keep an eye out for that. So we'll kind of jump right into the nitty gritty of the conversation. I want to be in and out within about 30 minutes, and then we'll do a ton of question and answer. Again, if you have comments you want to add in real time, please do toss that in there. For me, though, the number one thing that we can and should be implementing into our award programs is what I call a dual nominator and nominee process. If you've attended any of these webinars in the past, I talk about it pretty extensively all the time. I think is the number one driving force that increases participation, and B, it improves the quality of nominations that come in. And as a byproduct of that, it's also what leads to higher member engagement scores. So I'll kind of get deeper here into like how to actually implement this and what it looks like. But it's very, very simple. I kind of did highlight it here as two distinct stages. Traditionally speaking, many award programs have an open call for nominations. And that might be, nominating a peer or another chapter or another member for an award, or it might be a self-application or a self-nomination. The challenge with that is you miss out on 50% of the potential users and markets. What ends up happening in this model here is we're putting a whole lot of time and energy on the nominator. These are people who are volunteering their time to submit on behalf of other people. If you're asking them for extensive information or research or things like resumes, they either physically don't have it on hand, and so they kind of blow through the nomination process in pretty low quality, or they're already working in conjunction with who they want to nominate because they're the ones who know more about themselves. So if that is the case, the idea is to split this into two very distinct models where we have an open call for nominations. It's very simple, very short, very low barrier. And then the nominees themselves, and it could be a self-nominee, fills up the bulk of the work on behalf of themselves. So again, what this is going to do is increase participation, but it absolutely elevates the quality of work. So I'll kind of get deeper into like how to actually do this. One of the core metrics on this though is when I go to member engagement scores, I think there's a pretty shocking number of people that would be surprised that in general, we always focus on the award recipients and how their scores go up, but just being nominated by a peer or another member is the number one differentiator in their member engagement scores. Whether or not they're selected or not, just being recognized by their peers is the number one thing that engages them. So I think that's kind of one of the core reasons for that. Again, we'll kind of get deeper into how to implement this, but it also creates a pretty tremendous opportunity for follow-ups and kind of one-to-one communication with both parties, the nominator and the nominee, and that's how we can increase participation. So for those of you who are trying to increase the number of people who actually participate in your programs, this is the number one thing for you to implement. Obviously, without having some type of technology or tool in place, it's going to become a bit more challenging. But again, anything that we talk about here today, you can certainly do without using Reviewer. So I want to visualize what this could look like for you with a kind of a real example here. At a high level, for many organizations that do use Reviewer, we still want to start with your website. So your audience, your membership, your team, they're going to be going to your website first anyway. So we should leverage that. You got stronger content control, branding control, eligibility requirements. And then from there, we actually send them from your website to Reviewer. So this is a real example, although we did kind of strip out a little bit to redact it and make it a bit more generalized. But what's going to end up happening is we're going to send the nominators to a very simple page. It's like 3 questions or 4 questions. That's basically who are you nominating, and why. That's it. Now, if you are a self-nominee, you actually bypass this and go directly to the application. So as a nominator, I might say, let me go back a page here. I might say, hey, my name is Steve. I want to nominate Ryan, and at a high level, here's Ryan is a deserving candidate for this year's XYZ award. From there, what's going to happen is one of 2 things. We can leverage as much automation as you guys desire, and it can send a notification to, in this case, Ryan, saying, hey, Ryan, congratulations, you've been nominated for your 30 Under 30 award. Click here to begin your nomination. Alternatively, we have a lot of our clients who will hold on to all the nominations, especially if you are getting multiple nominations for the same person. And then when they're ready, they might vet through them, read through them, figure out who they want to invite to the next stage, and then they trigger this in bulk. The reason why this works so well, though, is then the nominee joins it. So think of it like the Oscars where you're accepting your nomination. So we're congratulating them, saying, what a prestigious honor to be recognized. Again, that's where their member engagement scores go up. And then we get deeper into the bulk of the nomination. See, we're in different industries. You've got different award categories. You're collecting different data from the recipients. In this specific example, this is kind of where it makes total sense because it's a real estate an award program. So we're asking for very specific things such as like real estate ID numbers. You may want to know more about like your sales volume and very industry specific things. We're asking for file uploads like resumes or transactions. And again, these are things that the nominator themselves generally doesn't have. So they're going to be going to the nominee anyways. Number two is if you are going to make the nominator gather all this information, write essays, long form content, file uploads, references, there's a high likelihood that they start this process and then stop because they just don't have the physical time to go further. There's also some challenges around like how do we make sure that the most deserving candidates are getting the fair opportunity that they deserve. You might have a really, really strong nominee, but the nominator knows very little about them, or they don't cover the important details just because they don't know all that information. So the nominee themselves is kind of at an unfair disadvantage because they're a very qualified candidate for that year's program or that award, but they missed out on key insights. So again, that's where the quality of work significantly goes up. So I'm not going to get too much deeper in like the nomination forms. If you guys can dream it up, our platform can power it from long form content to essays to file uploads to photos to videos, you name it. I would say from a video perspective, um, I do like having nominees submit like a little video kind of explaining their achievements and why they're a good fit for this year's program. The number one reason why I like that, and we're going to come back to this later, is for member recognition voting as a little kind of teaser. And then number two is at your galas and at your annual conferences, when you go to celebrate your recipients, it's really powerful marketing collateral to have to kind of highlight and showcase your membership to the broader base. Another reason why this works really, really well is from an operation perspective on your dashboards, we give you a lot of key metrics. So again, if you're looking to increase participation, it's very much human nature to procrastinate. You're going to have both nominators and nominees that want to participate. They start the process and then life happens. They leave, they intend to come back later, but they don't, they forget about it. So we can actually track in real time basically all the activity. So from a nomination perspective, like who are our nominators? Are they done or not done? And if they're not done, we can send them reminders. From there, we can start to measure conversion rates. So we can look at all of our nominees and say, okay, have you been nominated? Yes or no. If you haven't, if you've been nominated, have you accepted it and started your portion later to again increase the conversion rate that they actually finished through with their application? So you might be asking yourselves then, at least in your more traditional model with how you currently collect nominations, how do you visualize that? Because now we've got a nominator, we have nominee, we've got file uploads, we've got long form content. How do we merge that together in a very digestible manner? I'm not going to get into the review today. That's a separate kind of webinar topic, but that's kind of the beauty of Reviewer is that it's very profile centric. So as your nominations come in, you get a very simple menu that shows you all of the nominees, not the nominators, although you do have access to that. These are the nominees. From here, if we click into them, we're going to get a snapshot or a bio of who they are. So again, in our example, this is Ryan, he or she, in their portion of the nomination. So here's your short form content, your essay prompts. There's a whole lot of content that we collected. Obviously, within Reviewer, you can communicate with them, you can send them messages, you can leave notes about them. But what I want to show you here is your file uploads. So every document that we've ever collected, so it could be resumes, it could be spreadsheets, it could be photos, it could be videos. The example, because it's a spreadsheet, but when you press view, it'll actually embed that document directly in front of you. So if you're collecting like certification letters or resumes or any other type of file upload, you never have to download and leave the system. It kind of keeps you in one spot. Better yet is going to be those nominations. So in this case, Ryan might have been nominated by two separate people, both Frederick and Louise. I can kind of jump over to this section. I can see who nominated them. And then when I press view, I can actually see what the nominator said about them. So it's really powerful insights all centralized in one spot. I've got nominee, all their information, I've got your file uploads, and I've got all the nominations that were submitted on their behalf in one place. So again, I'm trying to move relatively quickly because I do want to have a pretty good Q&A here today, but I hope you can kind of visualize what this process would look like. Obviously, it's a lot more complex than just throwing up two separate forms. We do have to make sure we split those two workflows in complete parallels. Yet we want to leverage automation that obviously automatically collects the nomination to the nominee. There's no way that I think you guys want to be downloading and exporting all of your nominations, figuring out who they're for, recompiling them. Obviously communicating with the nominee for their information and then recompiling it again. So it's really important to somehow systematize this process for it to do it for you. But the end result will look something hopefully very similar to this. And again, this does set the stage then for one of the last things that we're going to talk about, which is what I call like a member's choice award or a member's choice of voting process, which is going to loop in the general membership base. But if you go that route, you have to have very clear visibility on what you want them to vote on. And then again, as those votes come in, they have to get stored somewhere. So that's kind of the concept of a profile, is it'll also then start to hold on to ongoing communication, judging and scoring, and any other ongoing data that you're going to be collecting from your recipients. So the next thing I want to look at, and we probably should have started with this, is your strategic award categories. How many of you offer multiple award programs or multiple award categories? Just kind of toss a thumbs up there or react to that message. Many associations, might have one or two awards a year. It's like a 30 under 30, or it's a volunteer of the year, or like a Hall of Fame award. A large percent of your membership base. The idea about structuring these award programs is to leave no members behind. We want to create like an ecosystem where no matter what type of demographic you are, how long you've been a member for, or your different achievements, that there is some type of award category that you belong to. Obviously, when you have kind of a broader reach of different categories, it's certainly going to help increase participation. Number two is it helps kind of build emerging opportunities. I think many membership-based associations face a really tremendous long-term challenge, which is the sustainability of your membership. We live in a time now where you get a member and then you hopefully renew them year over year, right? But at some point they are going to age out. They're going to move on to different industries. They're going to retire. They're no longer going to be in that same job position. And so it's really critical for us to hopefully target a younger demographic of member. It's not necessarily just age-wise, but our new membership, because those are the lifeblood of kind of long-term sustainability and reoccurring membership dues, right, for your association. So when we design our different award categories, we want to kind of think outside the box and figure out like what type of categories or different kind of elements can we start to incorporate that, again, don't alienate any type of member. So for me, the first thing I want to look at is like, what is your mission and vision within your association? It seems like a very simple concept, but that's really where all of your award category design comes from. Because at that point, we can start to figure out like, how do we want to recognize our membership who are helping us or who are deploying characteristics that align with like what we actually stand for. It's kind of the guiding principle behind all of these different types of programs. So I want to jump specifically here to the different types of categories. For me specifically, I like to focus on kind of 6 elements, and you can have multiple categories under each one of them. The first one I'm going to talk about is that future focus category. And for me, this is like one of, if not the most important categories to focus on. It's your 30 under 30s, and that's an arbitrary number, 35, 40 under 40, you name it. Rising stars, a new member of the year. But basically, how do you sign a new member to your association and then instantly provide them some type of value by incorporating them to your award program? Somebody who signs up as a member tomorrow and then 3 months from now is nominated to a category is significantly more likely to renew their membership, as well as start to inject themselves into other campaigns and things that you're doing, right? They don't feel lost. They don't feel alienated. They feel like they're actually contributing to the association. So I think that's a no-brainer category for most of you. I also love innovation. So your membership and your members are all facing very similar challenges, and that's kind of like your job as an association, right? Is to advocate for them and to provide them resources and help them with self-development. So a lot of times our associations kind of like publicly pose challenges that their membership faces or the challenges that their industry is trying to solve, and they turn that into award categories. The reason why this is so impactful, and this is probably equally as important as your future focus category, is you're going to be building an incredible content library that you as an association can use for your membership. This is what powers your newsletters. For those of you that are a bit more progressive and are moving towards like a podcast model or doing like case studies on your members, this is where that content actually comes from. So we can celebrate and showcase our members who are solving the same challenges that everybody else is. It's also where you can start to loop them in as well to be a contributor. So say, for example, I as Kyle is this year's award recipient to whatever that category is. Maybe I'm going to do a guest blog or I'm going to speak at one of your events and you're going to showcase me in front of my peers. Obviously diversity and inclusion, many of you are already doing that now, but there's obviously a large membership base who kind of qualifies for that category. I also love community impact. I think like, how do we start to look at, again, from a mission perspective, like how do we honor our members who are going above and beyond and providing real value to our communities outside of their jobs and outside of their kind of chapters and things that they're doing. So Volunteer of the Year awards, Community Service of the Year, professional achievements, all those types of things. For any of you that are chapter-based associations, which is likely many of you, I would actually break this into two subcategories. You want to honor your chapter specifically, but then also consider at a local chapter level doing a subcategory. So the chapters themselves can do like their own mini award programs, and then from there, those recipients kind of move on to the next stage at the national or international level, where you're honoring kind of individual chapter or participants across different chapters that you have. And then lastly is your more mission stuff, right? Your lifetime achievements, your members of the year, your Hall of Fame awards, things like that. So I do want to kind of showcase where this becomes, again, kind of powerful in the reviewer. So I'm not going to show this to you, but I want to make sure that we are on the same page, that what you don't want to do is have separate nomination forms for every single award category. This is going to become an absolute nightmare from an operations perspective, because now you have all these nominations coming in. You need to go through like a review and selection process, and you can't obviously have all of your recipients coming from one category. So you need a way to have the system or whatever tools that you're using identify what category that nominee belongs to, bucket them accordingly, and then from there, you still need to potentially have very hyper-specific data collection from them. Like you're going to want to be collecting different data from your Hall of Fame award recipients versus your 30 under 30s. So in reviewer, many of our clients have a centralized workflow where you go to send in a nomination, and one of two things can happen. You can self-select what award you want to nominate or apply to, or some of our clients will actually fill out like an eligibility quiz, and based off of their persona and what they put into the system, it can actually make a recommendation for what categories that they align with. So that's another really good example is, maybe I do want to nominate somebody because I think that they're a great member, but I don't really necessarily know where they fit. So we fill out these short form kind of short questions, and then the system says, hey, this is a great nominee. They belong in XYZ category. Now, operationally speaking, we create these review workflows for you. So as you can kind of see in this simple example, we've got like 6 different buckets created, one per award category. So if I was to nominate, Susie for the new member of the year, obviously the system is going to update in real time and display the new member of the year application form. Even though it's one entry point, you still have different forms for each. And then on the back end, it's volunteer year award nominees go together, all the chapter excellence go together, and then kind of jumping way ahead. When you create your review processes, you can actually create like little committees or reviewers per award category. So when Sally, Stu, and Steve come in, they're only reviewing 30 under 30. When Cindy, Tony, and Paul come in, they're only reviewing the new member of the year nominations. So again, you're leveraging automation to bucket them for you, and then from there, using that automation to kind of divvy out those nominations to your team for review and selection. That is the next place that I want to go. I will share more about this. There's a lot of kind of other methodologies around how to structure your different categories. And I'll give you some piece to this is celebration and honoring your members themselves. So I want to be very clear that we want to have, I think, 2 parts to this. It's essential that we still have some type of formal review and selection process. We definitely want your boards, your staff, your executives, your team to go through a formal review of the nominations, This is a webinar we hosted yesterday about the review side of things, but we want to use a structured scorecard that provides clear consistency for your team of how they look at them, and obviously you want to leverage metrics and data to make like quantitative decisions on them. So you're still going to have like a very formal judging scoring process. However, I think it's really important to add a second piece to that, and that is to somehow loop in your broader membership base, let them view either all of the nominations, or as you go through the review and you have like a top 10 per category, or whatever that number comes out to be, let your members learn more about who is being honored and let them cast their own voice and cast their own votes. So some of the benefits behind that is, we talk about, if you've got, let's just say, for example, 1,000 members or 100 members, on average, if 3 to 5% participate, that's generally going to come from those that are nominating and being nominated. Now we can take this number to closer to 70 to 80%, right? Because we have our broader membership, who are all going to a page, they're reading about the profiles and they're casting votes. So you're going to have higher engagement scores, so now your entire membership is involved. It's also better from a marketing perspective, right? Because you can start to build anticipation and excitement around who these nominees are going to be. You can also showcase them at your annual conferences. It also helps promote like net promoter scores from your voters. The other thing that it's going to do is when your membership goes to view these profiles and potentially cast their vote, they're going to be more excited to potentially throw their hat in the ring for next year, because they also want to be publicly recognized by their peers. Public recognition and peer recognition is the number one form of it. And so when I see other people being honored, I can say, look, I can do that too. So next year, like, I'm going to apply, or I'm going to nominate somebody else who I think is really deserving, because they definitely would have had a fair shot this year. The other piece to that as well is not necessarily just member voting, but it's also celebration. So how many of you have on your websites like some type of page created where you have a list of all, award recipients from prior years? What that often looks like is a list, right? So 30 under 30, and then a bunch of bullet points of people's names and then the year. So especially for new members, when they go to that page, they don't know who those people are. They don't know anything about their achievements. They don't know why they were honored. So we can start to leverage this same model as a way to take these quote unquote profiles and then use them as a way to celebrate the actual award recipients themselves. So again, what does that physically look like? In this example here, I'm going to show you two versions of it. It is a very simple pub. You don't have to necessarily have just your finalists. You could actually have all of the nominations. For me, I don't want to make this part of our overall scores. I want to have two distinct award winners. I want to have my 30 under 30 recipient, which is the prestigious award, and then I want to have like our member choice as well. And they're likely going to be two separate people, and that's a good thing. But I want to make sure that this isn't the overpowering recipient. But what you can do is you can take either everybody, nominees, finalists, or the recipients, and put them on this page. This in itself is what's going to replace ideally your showcase of prior year recipients as well. You can show everyone, and then your membership gets a snapshot of all the recipients. So I can see Ryan here. I have some type of image. So it could be a thumbnail from a video. It could be a headshot. I have more information about Ryan. So like a Twitter length description of who he or she is and why they're recognized. And then once you open them up, you have a public profile. Now, to be very clear, if I jump back to this page and I look at somebody's nomination packet, there's a whole lot of stuff going on here. So what's beautiful about that page is you're not taking the entire nomination packet and putting it on that page. You can actually pick and choose which elements of it you want to show up. So if you're collecting a lot of private or confidential information that you don't want to publicly display, that's fine. Most of our clients keep it short, simple, and sweet. It's who they are, why they were supplemental information backs up their nomination. What's also cool about this too is you can actually have Ryan in this case come back after he or she has been selected, and they could fill out like a whole new form, basically saying something like, "Hey Ryan, we want to celebrate you on our website. Answer these questions," and then those responses, in theory, could be what powers this page here. So what's going to happen is you're going to get a gallery. So if you are collecting multimedia, so that goes back to what I mentioned on the front, that having videos submitted about my nominees, or if your team wants to record a video for them, that's great as well. That video will actually play here. They can look at photos, and then off to the right is kind of the high-level snapshot of who our a nominee is. If you are going to use this for voting, you will notice that there is a vote function. There's many ways to do voting. What I would tell you is that as much as that we want to trust our membership, again, it's human nature potentially to sometimes try to game the system. So there's some protocols in place to make sure that this is a very fair, compliant, non-flawed or gamed voting structure. You can do things like, but the idea is you can start to limit them on how often they can vote, and also prevents them from, going to Fiverr and buying 100 votes, or, clearing their browsing history and voting over and over and over again. But the idea as a member, I could come here, I could cast a vote, I could go back, read somebody else's profile, maybe I want to cast another vote, and then that data is then aggregated for you, so that you're going to have on a per award category basis all of the, people's choice or member recipients that you select.